old men in suits just are not cool.
You can't divert from the movie at all.
Yeah.
And you're like, but look at all these great toy lines that came before
that
did it right.
We were able to tell them this is what's needed for the toy market to be viable.
The guys that probably did Brave and the Bold probably thought like, well, this was just lore from somewhere.
They might have been of that age and had that item.
And and it's just like they just didn't think like it was just created for that line.
Yeah.
But it was, which is cool. What's up, guys? We've got a special sort of interview for you today. I did one with Ryan from Toy Federation a while back, and you guys seem to kind of love that, like me sitting down and talking with someone like, I don't know if in the toy industry or like-minded people, but kind of like, just being able to riff off people is just something you guys said you wanted to see more of. So I decided to phone a friend, and today we have my friend Aaron Archer, who used to work for Kenner, then came over to Hasbro, and that's where I got to know Aaron. He was there when I was there. And we got let go around the same time, but he's always been, vocal in the toy industry. He's a big Transformers guy in the Transformers community, fantastic artist. He's worked on a ton of brands, but specifically today, I wanted to bring him in, talk about his time working on Kenner Batman the Animated Series. So we go over a lot of really cool aspects of his time at Kenner, some stuff, venturing out to Hasbro and just toys in general. So I think you guys are going to like this. Some really good behind the curtain sort of information that we discuss. So stay tuned and see me and Aaron get into some Batman. The last time we were here, which was such a fun hangout, by the way, we briefly talked about your time at Kenner on Batman. And I was like, you know what? I want to talk more about that. Because Batman's, my favorite superhero, and this time, Batman animated series time, I felt like was such a cool time. I was there as a kid. You were there as a designer.
Yeah.
So hearing the culture of it and stuff like that, that was cool.
It was a cool line that they had, because I had watched the show in college, my last couple of years at college. We kind of sat down to appointment television to pay attention, hoping new episodes would come out. And so soon after, a couple months after doing that, to find myself working on these products, pretty wild.
Now, was that what you started on at Kenner, or were you working on other stuff at Kenner?
Yeah, when I got interviewed in late '94, it was for the Gargoyles and Predator lines. And by the time I came in January of '95, those lines had been canceled, and they had to put me somewhere, and they put me on Batman.
Awesome.
And so I kind of found myself on Kenner's #1 boys brand at the time.
Not a bad place to be.
No.
Yeah. It's too bad though, that Predator line was so good.
I really wish I would have been able to. I consider myself a monster guy, so to touch that would have been cool.
Yeah,
for sure.
I had them all as a kid. I mailed away for the clear Predator.
Yeah.
That was such good stuff. And it was it kind of came out of nowhere. It's there was no cartoon or anything like that. And then all of a sudden you had Predator figures, a rated R movie, and then boom. And I'm like, well, I knew Predator as a kid, even though it's a rated R movie, but it was the figures were so good.
Yeah, you could get away with, or Kenner got away with a lot of that with RoboCop and Terminator. And really were able to navigate that, where some other lines over the years, Freddy, kind of tanked quick, from some, social pressures. Yeah,
it was weird that happened like that.
Yeah.
And it's I know Kenner had that. Was it Kenner or Mattel that did that alien figure back in the late 70s?
That was Kenner, yeah.
That was Kenner.
Yeah.
I was that one had a lot of backlash. I have the Max Effects Freddy out there. That one had a lot of backlash. So it's how did all of a sudden RoboCop and Predator was just socially acceptable? Yeah. I know RoboCop was
I can accept that you can convert monsters. The Godzilla cartoon as a kid, stuff like that. You can convert monsters to be okay. But RoboCop
was rough.
It came with caps, let's double down.
Yeah, we'll talk about Batman. I can go on talking about RoboCop and Predator forever, but so tell me about because you touched on the fact that the culture there was different. We all know coming out of Kenner took over after Toy Biz, so you had the Dark Knight collection, which was phenomenal, but very dark, brooding Batman. Then you had Batman Returns, bright colored, Aqua Batman, that sort of thing. Then we go into animated series right on the heels of that, And kind of the same thing where it's very toyetic, and there's really like one core Batman figure, the Combat Belt Batman.
Yeah.
You were saying that they said no, like they didn't want you following like regular Batman.
Kenner had that, if you go back to the early 80s, that tradition of mech tech.
Yep.
Chuck Norris, superpowers, all those things that you squeeze legs and things moved, or Beetlejuice, Bill and Ted's,
that's right,
stuff that flipped out, and magic, sometimes Ghostbusters.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the Ghostbusters had all the Fright feature figures.
And so they valued the feature play at that time, which was robust. Kids were buying toys, and so they really focused on that toy play over honoring the source material, because we were speaking to kids, and often they might not be able to even watch the source material at this time. VHS tapes, and
but I feel like every kid was watching Batman the animated series.
Yeah, on TV.
Yeah,
for sure. They did rerun that one, and that one got played like at night on Fox as well.
Yes.
So when it came to the Batman animated series, I think they did their efforts to make the first run of every character as accurate as possible. And then it was as if the mentality was, well, we've done that, we don't ever have to look back. And I kind of blame internal toy development for that, where senior management sees some of these items for a year or two, and before the item even comes out. So they're sick of seeing gray Batman, even though there's only one on the shelf.
Yeah.
And so when you bring up number 2 gray Batman, they're like, didn't we just do one of those? And they were convinced back then, you can tell by the colors of Batman, and particularly Batman Beyond, vibrancy and attractiveness on shelf, and having every color in the rainbow on the peg, so mom knew, you have the orange one and the purple one, I'll get the yellow one and the red one.
That's a good point.
And that was how they divvied up the mentality. And it was much better to do a new feature-based Batman that's a whole different color than gray Batman with this feature. It was just how they promoted the overall, to see what the line was at that time.
The thing that's weird about that is, and I'm sure that the senior management had changed, but you think about Kenner's Star Wars.
We had the same guy for a long time.
Okay. Well, you think about Kenner's Star Wars. Empire Strikes Back came out, they were still doing Farm Boy Luke.
Yeah.
And they were still doing Farm Boy Luke on the Return of the Jedi card. So it's like, they were still pushing that. What kind of was crazy is, you had this early stuff. It's like, all right, Combat Belt Batman and the Turbojet Batman, which wasn't in the cartoon, but he was very cool, but still gray.
Felt accurate.
But then it's not like you were carrying forward the Combat Belt Batman. Had you did, they'd have sold a ton of units, but he's this rare figure, and it's like, he's the most screen accurate Batman.
There should have been one in every assortment pack.
And it's like, carry forwards are so common.
Yeah.
At Hasbro, we were doing carry forwards all the time.
Yeah.
So like how they just were like, nope.
Yep.
They didn't carry forward anybody.
No, they really didn't. And then in order for us designers who, trying to advocate for Batman that look like Batman when we could, knowing the rules of the road, but we try. And that's where you see items like this one where it was an exclusive, so management didn't have to approve it. So I can go a little more traditional. Let's do a 2-pack that's a Walmart exclusive. Let's go a little more traditional. We could pull it off in these side places. Okay. Or 2-packs. Like there's the Superman 2-pack, and then there's the Two-Face with Arkham Asylum gate feature.
Yeah.
And we would sneak them in there because they were like a different kind of presentation avenue.
Got it. So you did this, right? This VHS exclusive one.
Yeah.
Which I think is so cool because it's the only other time I think the Combat Belt Batman was used, but you just like gave him a little bit metallic in the gray, made it a little more blue. But it's the standard Batman. Yeah, he comes with this, this disc shooter, but
infrared Batman redeco parts. Yeah.
Yeah. So, that's
even
kind
trying
cool.
to get the yellow of the bat signal.
Of course.
And just trying to bring the lore into it. We snuck it in where we could. The main guy, Tom McGrath, who ran Kenner for a long time, and he was very micromanagement kind of style. He wanted to see how the pack out would look for every item and the color choices. Sometimes we'd even have to put the Pantone chips on the presentation boards.
Really?
Back then, absolutely. And we'd have to do a little inset of how the materials would fill out a blister.
Wow.
Because he wanted to, so he, I mean, I don't want to call it totally micromanagement, but he went to a deep level.
Yeah, because we didn't see that at Hasbro.
No, not at all.
Yeah.
That went away. I think that went away as our designer load kept going higher and higher. When I started back in the mid-90s, we had maybe 25 active projects with another 5 to 10 in development of some sort.
25,
that's crazy. And I remember a couple years early where at some point in the midsummer before you start pitching the next year's stuff, we had dead time where all the marketers were out on a sales 2-week thing that was separate from Toy Fair. It was happened in the summer. And we would just like clean our offices and tidy up our boards. I learned how to sculpt wax, and it was really weird. And that, so we had different load, weight, work rate things at that point. Because by the time you and I got together, all you could do was keep it from burying you, right?
I know. Yeah. I know. I was like, downtime. Jeez, we never had downtime.
I mean, Transformers, we actively did 250 mainline items.
Yeah.
Not exclusives, conventions.
I was
things
averaging.
That dropped off,
I think I was averaging 130 items per year on Marvel, which is more than the rest of the team combined. Yeah. I was just a workhorse. I was just like, give me more items, I never turned anything down, but it got to the point where you're working constantly.
Yeah. And then at this time too, I should say, it started kind of the playbook of having feature-based guys, not too many villains. We didn't get to do a lot of Batgirls. We only got to do a couple Robins and Nightwings.
Okay.
It kind of set up that paradigm of the hero is the main important thing, and then everything else just kind of falls off a cliff. And we had to live with that for a long time. Even getting a Robin made or Nightwing was like effort.
Well, you even still see that even kind of today, like what McFarlane's doing with DC. He does like 20, 30 Batman a year.
Yeah.
And then it's like one supporting character here and there. It's just he's still pushing the Batman, which I get. It's Batman.
Yeah.
But to me, when I was a kid, I needed one Batman. I had superpowers Batman, then I got combat belt Batman, and it was like that's kind of all I needed.
Yeah. Yeah. I ran into the same problem when you look at like the Legends of the Dark Knight.
Yeah.
I got to do the big kind of Kelly Jones cape versions in blue and black, and those are some of the only accurate comic Batman that Kenner ever did.
Sure.
In a line that wasn't called out specifically Bob Kane Batman.
Yeah.
Or something.
Did you do all the Legends of the Dark Knights?
No. I ended up taking over that line after like the first wave and a half was done.
Oh, okay.
So I did a lot of the back end guys. My first guy was might have been the Robin with the camouflage.
Okay. Yeah.
And stuff.
Because there was it Legends or was it what Legends became?
Man-Bat was.
Oh, that one was great.
That was that's probably my favorite item that I did in my entire career. As far as drawing a monster, he's pretty cool. That line, So Man-Bat was probably one of my favorite.
That's a good one.
I did a lot of the villains. I did Clayface, and
Well, let's talk about villains for a second, because you did he is my all-time favorite Batman villain, Ra's al Ghul. Now, you did this specific figure.
Yes.
Now, you have something interesting about this figure.
Yeah, so one of the rules that was put on us at the time was no old men in suits.
Which that's what he was in the comics.
So you didn't. Yeah. That's why you never saw Commissioner Gordon. You didn't see an Alfred. You didn't see like the police. One guy. And characters like the Ventriloquist, Mad Hatter, and Ra's al Ghul fell into this. Well, we like them; they're important, to the story. But old men in suits just are not cool. And so I was tasked with, if we want to do this character, we got to make him more about that Lazarus Pit battler version of this character than the cerebral, I'm working to take over the world part.
Yeah, because even in the comics, that iconic cover, that Neil Adams cover, when he fights Batman in the desert, he's got no shirt on.
He's usually,
and it's just like, okay, well, there's really not much to go on there.
Yeah. So I had to create this armor from scratch. Me and another designer, Chris Woods, kind of spitballed different ideas. They had the helmet in the show, and I think he had a sword in the show, and the symbol on his chest was an aspect of the program. And so I kind of took those elements and then just amplified it with armor and tried to surround him with accurate stuff.
Yeah.
So that people would be more amenable to him. Unfortunately, we went through a phase where we were blistering right to the card without an internal blister. So it was just like vacuum formed.
Oh, really?
Onto the blister on a yellow background.
Oh,
when
so
this
you
guy
just got
came
lost.
out. Yeah, he was a peg warmer for a long time because the package looked smaller and he got lost. And for a long time, the gang made fun of me because he was a peg warmer. But over time, you know, I'm very happy he's there. And I was telling you, they put him in the Brave and the Bold Batman show.
So
years and years
design
later. Yeah.
kept going.
Yeah. So they legitimized that concept years later in the DC universe. So that's kind of cool. Yeah.
It's just like, all right, well, you know, yeah, your animation. The guys that probably did Brave and the Bold probably thought like, well, this was just lore from somewhere.
They might have been of that age and had that item.
Or that, yeah.
You know.
And it's just like they just didn't think like it was just created for that line.
Yeah.
But it was, which is cool.
Yeah. So that was cool to see.
I'm like that mark on Batman is like.
Yeah, I was really surprised
That's
when
really
someone
cool.
sent that to me. I'm like, wow, that's full circle. Because I did this like within the first 6 months I was there.
Okay.
You know, so it's been a long time.
Yeah. But it's like, even now, you know, you'll see Roz in armor, like, you know, multiple different times now. Because it's, again, he's
It started something.
He's the old guy in the suit. And it's like, I find it crazy that he is my favorite Batman villain, but yeah, he showed up, but he was a formidable foe because he was like an equal detective to Batman.
Yeah.
It was almost like he was Batman that didn't have to wear the suit.
Yeah.
And then when they fought, it was just like, yeah, I don't need a suit. I'm just going to take my shirt off and fight you with a sword. There was something really cool about him.
In years later, when I did the Night Force Ninja line, I did a shirtless Batman referencing those fights.
Okay.
Yeah.
So then you were doing this stuff, and then they had you on the Crime Strike line?
So when I came in, they'd been making Batman animated product for a few years.
Yep.
And they had launched Crime Squad.
Crime Squad, that's
which
what it was.
This kind of had this notch in the back that the vehicle and things could hook onto this, and you know, it was what it was. So they were already doing Crime Squad. The first wave had already been completed, and then I got to add to that concept. And so I was an illustrator. I came in telling stories and doing cool concept art and stuff like that, and that's how I got in. And then they challenged me to make a model so that I could be a toy designer. So this is actually my first toy I invented or had to, you know, figure out why it does these things and all that stuff, like sell it in and try to make sense of it. So
did it come natural or was it a little difficult?
It was good. It was fine. I was working with Ham Woodhouse.
He was all right.
And he guided me those early days. The first figure I ever touched was one of his sculpt inputs. I was doing his sculpt inputs.
Very cool.
Because he would do all the mech tech stuff. So he guided me through this. I borrowed all his tools to make the model and styrene cutting and everything. So I had, you know, it wasn't like they were totally throwing me to the wolves. But it was certainly like, okay, Junior, time to not just draw pretty pictures, but actually prove that you can understand how things move and make a thing. And in the end, I didn't end up doing a lot of that kind of model work. I just proved myself other ways to sell my concepts in. But it was good that I did a few of these along the way.
Yeah.
Because you can, I mean, as you know, you can come to toy design a lot of different ways.
You can, And it's like I came from illustration, but then I got industrial design, so I hit both ends of it. But there were so many designers there that couldn't draw. They were just ID guys. And then there were some guys, you know, a Steve Redinger who's really good at drawing. He was probably the best, I said one of the best artists at Hasbro. And seeing him draw was just like, this is awesome.
Yeah, he was a different cat because he was an industrial designer and a model maker and could draw well. I got into Kenner because, you know, all those mech tech guys they were essentially model makers. They, and inventing spring-loaded things. So they were desperate for people who knew how to draw the human anatomy, who were interested in coming up with costume designs and outfits, and so I got in there at the right time because that's all I got to do. And
well, something like him, you got to do a new costume, right? Like that figure.
Yeah,
was
this is
new.
one of the only toolings I think they used of this one. He's got a lot of detail, but they were very. This is a signature of mine on my Batman. I always have a thing on the back of the belt that is a different type of piece of gear, or kit. Sometimes it's a batarang. Sometimes it's a spool of wire with a claw on it, and it's all sculpted on there. This is just some sort of device. But we were very limited even with tooling on Batman. So we did not do, there's like 5 or 6 animated bodies.
Which is crazy because they were probably selling so many of them.
Oh.
It's only 5 POA, so it's like...
Yeah, this was a high profit item back in the day under the old rules. We had like under 20 paint apps per figure. Sometimes down to 15, depending on the elaborateness of this thing. At different points, we had to have a Trico cape as well as this. We convinced them that this is the cape. There were a lot of those kind of rules.
Okay.
So as a result, they said, okay, we'll just keep redecoing these figures and more focus on whatever.
Sure.
Cave climber stuff and road rocket stuff and slalom racer stuff. Insert whatever great Batman name. But
well, I mean, so going back to like when I was growing up in that Dark Knight line and that Batman Returns line, they were doing really out there stuff. They had this Toys R Us line that had Batman with this big glider, but he was white and gray camo. And I love that Batman. Yeah. I like the outside the box stuff. So when I got to Hasbro and I was like, they put me on Spider-Man, I'm like, cool, I'm gonna do all these crazy Spider-Man things. And Sony doing Spider-Man 2 at the time, they let me do that. So that Amazing Spider-Man 2 line, I got to do all these crazy things. And the guys on Marvel were like, oh man, you're so lucky you get to do like neon colors and all this crazy out there stuff. And then I go on to regular mainline Marvel and you can't divert from the movie at all.
Yeah.
And you're like, but look at all these great toy lines that came before that did it right.
I remember we used to really tell DC, and I say this respectfully, I don't want to come off like we were being cocky, but like we were able to tell them this is what's needed for the toy market to be viable. We can't just do gray Batman. Or just all gray and black Batman. And we would say we have data, proof of sales that, the white or the Dayglow or yellow from those series were huge. There was a red one that was huge. The Nightfall Batman and the Legends of Batman was probably one of the number one figures.
It's my favorite Batman suit ever.
Might be one of the biggest Batman figures Kenner ever sold.
Really?
Like it's up there.
Because that line,
that line wasn't everywhere.
That's right, because it wasn't. Because it was a short line. That's why I asked you if you worked on that one, because that line had comic accurate Nightwing.
Yeah.
It had this cyborg Batman that was taken out of the pages of a Superboy comic. It was like, whoever designed that line knew the comics.
Yeah. Mike Brand.
It was like that Azrael Batman. So good.
Yeah, that was real good. Yeah. And I got to do some on the back end of that. I did the Pirate guys.
The Joker.
Joker.
Gotcha.
Yeah, and the Gladiator Batman.
That was a good one?
Yeah, that was all right.
Yeah.
Parrish helped me with that one, Brian Parrish.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
When he was an intern.
An intern. That's crazy.
We'd tell them that this is what we need to do to sell toys, and they would go with it. They would accept it in their notes. Today, it feels like, I can't make judgments. I'm not in these discussions, but, we don't have a purple Iron Man. You don't have too many yellow Spider-Man, as an example of what you're saying. And I don't know if we live in that total kid market now where you need as much of it, but the idea that I can only buy red, white, and blue Captain Americas, or maybe black, white, and blue, red, I feel like the shelf's missing something. Because once I have one really cool, accurate one, do I ever need more stuff?
Exactly.
Breaks the model down.
I see, who hasn't lost that is Playmates. Playmates, Turtles, let's do them all.
Yeah.
Turtles in all different colors. Do everything.
They do a lot of tooling.
They do a lot of tooling. But I look even with my Action Force line, it's like, all right, well, I did one Steel Brigade. Well, I'm like, I don't want people to just need one steel brigade. You want the desert one. You want the Arctic one. You want the night ops one. We did the breast cancer pink one. It's like, I want to bring some of that back.
There's a world of stories.
Yeah.
You know, that's what we always used to be like, Batman is so great because he's like dedicated, skilled, and rich. So anything that you want to come up with that will help fight the Rogues Gallery, to us made logical sense. All these crazy toys, because he's that dedicated. He'll figure it out, right? That is a comic book trait. He's always prepared to take everybody down if that's what's needed. He's got a plan. And so that's how our attitude towards the toys were. These are all just part of his plans.
Sure. And
we really tried to get DC to do, back in the 90s, they were kind of doing pinup books or like stat books where it's just kind of the history of the brand and pictures of Batmobiles in the Batcave and like schematics and stuff. We were always like, why don't you just put your best guys on a bunch of these toys we've made and just do pinups. And they never wanted to put them in universe, make them legitimately in their part of the content world. Which
is so odd, because you even look at some of the movies.
The benefits would have been huge.
Yeah.
I mean, it really would have been.
Look at it's like, you look at the Kilmer movie, the Clooney movie. It's like when they needed to fight the foe, like, they lost to the foe in the regular suit. Then they needed that enhanced suit. The first Batman versus Predator comic that Andy Kubert did, he needed like a Dark Knight type armored suit to fight Predator. It's like, that's great. And it makes total sense, because even when he goes up against Superman, it's like, you can't do it in your blue and gray. All right, I need an armored suit. So why wouldn't you need it for Mr. Freeze or Joker or Two-Face or Mad Hatter?
So we just took that concept, and that gave us all the permission in the world to sell it into DC. There were very few things that they didn't bite on, but that is how we got all this crazy stuff through. We tried to be, at its core, Batman, and then theme all this stuff with points and scallops and stuff, and hopefully you get there.
Was there something that you really wanted to do they said no to?
I don't know if I had things totally shot down. Some things got rearranged. We had done a line called Batlink, early days of the internet and all this kind of stuff, and Batman was going to go fight digitally, right? And,
Cyber Batman.
Yeah, right. And in the end, a lot of that stuff kind of came out, but they rolled it into Batman Beyond. And it was a much better concept and design style. We had a whole different design style.
Got it.
And it was all clears and translucents with edge lighting and stuff. It was kind of interesting at the time. Materials processes is one of the things that we tried to play up at the time. And it got put into Batman Beyond and just kind of became a sub-segment of that.
Okay.
So I'm disappointed that didn't come out the way we intended. I pitched some characters along the way, but probably for the better that, we don't have the cop from,
Like Harvey Bullock?
No, the guy with Lockdown, had like the guy in the jail. He had an armored top and helmet. He was a cop, but he had partial armor.
Oh, gotcha.
I
remember that one.
I think that's what his name was, Lockdown. And, just a presentation that didn't go anywhere. That kind of stuff. Our highs and lows were different than what you experienced in your time at Hasbro side, where we only had so many slots, and they got filled up pretty quickly with Batman.
Sure.
And so we just kind of executed as planned. So there wasn't a lot of disappointment or things dropped, particularly on Batman, because it was the most successful thing.
Yeah.
Now, if I worked on, Vortec or some of these other lines that were happening at the same time, that wasn't the case, right?
Yeah.
Things got dropped and kicked out all the time. But we were pretty on top of it and didn't have a lot of those problems. It took us a while to get Harley Quinn made.
Really?
Yeah. Well, she was a new character. She was a female.
Yeah.
This is still the era.
It's just crazy.
We're selling to kids. So.
Yeah. She said nowadays, it's like you say that, and it's like, Harley Quinn, she's just as popular as the Joker.
We had to provide some statistical analysis from the show as far as to prove that she was a popular character and growing in popularity. This is 96.
Yeah.
Because
she, for those of you that don't know, she debuted in the Batman animated series comic first.
Yeah.
And then she was in the show, right? Something like that?
Yeah. And Paul Dini made her.
Yeah.
Created it. And it took us a while to get that one in to the point where we showed those statistics, and that president had written back like, okay, fine, in a memo. Like, this is before email. And we had all these statistics. He wrote on, okay, fine, and gave it back to us. And when we went to present the toy to the management team, we had that thing blown up. Like,
President said yes.
Really big, like, go for it. Like, we're not stopping this now, you know? So that was the kind of struggle on that one we would have. You know, because, again, it was all Batman.
Yeah.
You know, and vehicles, you know, and everything else was more of a risk, it felt like.
Okay. Did you do the camo Batmobile?
I didn't do the camo Batmobile, but I did do the Dayglow yellow Batmobile, the redeco of the...
I'm trying to remember that one. I remember seeing it.
It was a Walmart Blitz item, so it kind of came and went.
Got it. Because I remember there was a Batmobile that had like green camo on it.
Yeah. Didn't do that one. I didn't really do a lot of the vehicles, not being an industrial designer. I did my best to probably stay away from problem areas for me. So I was happy to take those. In that same era, I was taking a lot of the 100th edition Batman, Bob Kane Batman.
I remember those, yeah.
You know, these weird one-off things, because the mainline guys, you know, mech tech guys like Ham, they wanted to invent stuff. Doing a Bob Kane Batman, a little figure on a post that's not articulated, they were like, yeah, comic guy, you know, have fun with that, you know, and I did.
Yeah.
But it was not the type of product they like to make. So I inherited a lot of cool stuff because of just their having that kind of attitude.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
So, guys, Aaron's mentioning someone named Ham. Ham, which is crazy that, Aaron, that you worked with Ham, and I got to work with Ham, you know, at different eras. Ham worked at Hasbro, and he was we called them tinkerers, you know, guys that just made models. Like, oh, this is a cool feature. Like, when I was on Spider-Man, he was helping me with web fluid shooters, trying to make it shoot in a spiral and stuff like that. And he would just sit in his office and just make models.
Yeah.
Never draw
cut styrene.
Yeah, cut styrene stuff.
Glue.
Yeah.
Kicker.
He would sketch something out really quickly to get an idea, but he liked just getting his hands dirty and getting into it.
Oh yeah.
So watching guys like him work.
He had all the tools also.
He had all the tools.
Every tool in his office. So you could always rely on that. Yeah. So he taught a lot of us how to be thinking about making products, tinker, mech tech stuff. Even if I wasn't going to excel in it, I definitely learned a lot from. Yeah,
it made you think in a different way.
Oh yeah.
You know, you're like, oh, okay, yeah, it would be okay to have Batman with a giant backpack with Batarang axes on it. It's okay.
Yeah. You know? And in that tradition, I mean, I will say, like, creative to creative, he was nurturing to the next generations, and that was one of the best things about him. He could have been, he could have been superstar, closed off. I'll debut my cool stuff when I can or when I do, but he was inclusive and sharing, and that helped all of us be better creatives at the toy company.
I would always tell the kids from FIT when they would come to Hasbro, and I'd give the presentations. I said, you gotta be a sponge, because I learned so much from him, Boudreaux, guys that aren't with us anymore, whose knowledge is kind of lost, and it only keeps going. Guys like us that took that knowledge from them, and then we pass it on to other people.
And that is how it works. And these are probably timeless, but the makeup of all these companies changes all the time, and you wonder where that knowledge ends up. But,
I know. When I see like guys not offering up stuff all the time, or like trying to be hard and more standoffish, it's like, I'm sure Mark hated that I asked him 100 questions a day. I sat right outside his office, but I'm like, I didn't care. I wanted to learn from this guy who's been in the industry for 30 years.
He probably only hated it because it stressed him out, because he was not getting his stuff done, but he was happy to help. That's the funny thing.
But to me, it's
hurt
like,
himself to help you.
Yeah. But they were always super nice about it. I asked questions, him, Merton, but that's the only way to do it. So if you're timid and you're going in and you're not like, oh, I don't want to ask that guy, so he looks like he's kind of grumpy. Like, no, like, that's where you're going to get it from. You're not going to get it anywhere else. It's not in a book.
And for me, I always say, like, on Batman, we had like 5 different segments from movie to animation to comic, and a few other little things in there, celebratory and nostalgic stuff. And I mean, cutting your teeth on that range,
Sure.
and learning from those guys at the same time. I mean, that talk for me, best training for 4 years I could have ever hoped to get, because Batman has it all.
Yeah.
He really does.
Is that how long you were there for?
I was in Cincinnati for 6 years, and then Batman 4.5 or so before I got moved to episode 1.
Okay.
I'm a little shaky on that timing, but it's in general.
That's right. You have the claim of the most Jar Jar Binks items, right?
I do. Well, only because when I came to that team, everyone was overloaded, and they had to offload 2 projects per person to me to load me up.
Gotcha.
And everyone gave me their Jar Jar. Didn't matter if it was a soft good, a toy game,
feature
like
figure,
a candy distributor thing that someone was working on, the 12-inch figure that threw the ball. You know, I inherited everybody's Jar Jars. So I revel in it. I'll take it.
That's awesome.
I'll take it. And I had to go to Lucasfilm to get them approved. So essentially, I had to really deal with a lot of technical details on Jar Jar that most people today wouldn't even know.
Yeah, because they Lucasfilm loved Jar Jar. They were pushing him.
Well,
so it's
in those days before we knew where the movie would end up. You know, they were printing gold, and this was going to be a gold standard character. So they held that character to a high standard. If you look at the deco on those Jar Jars.
Yeah, because he had all the spots and stripes on his arm. Yeah.
Yes, he did.
Yeah.
So that's probably a longer, painful discussion for another day. But yeah.
So would you say during your time on Batman, the Man Bat was your favorite item you worked on?
Yeah, that one. And I did Energy Surge Batman for Legends of Batman, which was a deluxe item, kind of chromed.
Gotcha.
And it's as close as we got to that Legends of Dark Knight electro suit. I had to change the helmet, but I have my sculpt input. They were having an issue with Frank Miller and royalties at the time, or what he wanted or didn't want to have happen with his products, and so I had to change the helmet. But if you look at that figure, he's got the acid shooter in his hand that even is posed in such a way, and he's called Energy Surge Batman.
Yeah,
you know, so that's probably my favorite Batman figure I did.
Okay,
but Man Bat was my favorite.
That's such a great figure. I remember getting that one as a kid. That was such a great figure because that replaced my animated series Man Bat when I would play with Batman figures.
Yeah. Well, that's still a great figure.
Oh, it is. It definitely
all
is.
those early animated figures are great. Clayface is awesome.
Oh yeah, yeah. And it's like it wasn't like he was a deluxe figure. Like he was the same as him.
Yeah.
You know, and nowadays this would be if these were $10, he'd be 15 or 12. You know. Yeah.
Starting to where we started today, going back to where we started, it's amazing we didn't just keep these things in some sort of every other or every fifth, or I don't know if we didn't really overproduce and then dole them out.
Yeah.
So that would have been the problem then, keeping that inventory just sitting there. But it would have been better had we put more of those out more consistently.
Sure.
And we never discussed it.
Which is crazy.
It hardly ever, that stuff never came up. I think maybe Steve Bono would have been the type that would have brought that up.
You think we should just carry that one forward?
Yeah. Nah. We would just do a new Joker or a new Riddler.
Yeah.
And we couldn't do Penguin. Penguin was another old man in a suit.
Because they did. They had the first one, which is crazy because he had soft goods and stuff. Like he was a good figure.
And his body is the old one, or has he got a whole new sculpt?
He was a whole new sculpt. He was that straight animated styling.
Okay.
And yeah, that was all new and then never got used again.
Yeah. Wow.
Well, listen, I think people really dug this. I think giving people kind of peek behind the curtain is always fun. And I know you have your channel where you talk about stuff a lot, especially Transformers stuff. So, why don't you tell people where that is?
Yeah, I got a YouTube.
Because you guys got to check out his channel.
Yeah, I got a YouTube channel, The Toy Armada with Aaron Archer, where I largely talk about eras of product I worked on in chunks, whether it's a Transformer or Aliens or Total Justice, and just kind of talk about like what we did today.
Yeah.
What was happening in real time, kind of like director commentary.
Sure.
In that way.
Sure.
And then I do a live where we just basically talk toys and Q&A.
Oh, that's cool.
Just sometimes I'm drawing, sometimes I'm showing stuff from my office, and just have fun with the Transformers community has been really solid for me over these
Yeah.
years. So I have a long-term commitment with these people. So
That's cool.
We keep,
And I love,
we keep it going.
I love, for guys, you should check out Aaron's work. He goes, I saw him do it at shows. He takes the instructions for Transformers and he does marker rendered paint marker sketches of the characters on the instructions. It's so cool. Very cool stuff. I've never seen anybody do that. And it's like, that's awesome. Because you're taking a piece of the toy and then creating art out of it.
Yeah, it's really, people really responded well to it because it is, you can get your favorite character, the toy you had with maybe a guy who had something to do with it, or just a cool image of your favorite character. And so, yeah, it's pretty much all I've been doing as far as that goes. Yeah.
Cool. Well, guys, we're going to put a link to Aaron's channel in the description below. So definitely check it out. A lot of great toy knowledge there. Thank you for spending some time with me to be able to talk Batman. Hope you guys enjoyed this one, and maybe we'll do this one again.